So this is my second video for today, and I've actually been musing over this topic for I guess about a month and a half now. It's something that I wanted to share and do a vlog on. And this is wrapping something old and ineffective in a new package is not going to magically make it effective. So what I'm speaking of here specifically is patriarchal views of womanhood and patriarchal views of male-female quote-unquote roles. So first we have to touch on that subject. Anyone who thinks that males and females have prescribed roles that they cannot act outside of must not have lived in a household with both males and females. Because to say that one's gender determines what one does throughout the day doesn't make any sense if you've ever lived in a household with both genders. And I'll give you an example. I was raised in a household where, well, my brothers actually lived with my father once my parents divorced, and all of me and my sisters lived with my mother. But my father got off from work before my mother, so we would spend our after-school time at his house waiting for my mother to get off from work. So I would spend a large portion of the day at my father's house with my brothers. At that time, it was considered the role of the woman, to cook the food and to make sure that everyone was fed. If there came, and my grandmother lived with my father's mother. So if there came a time in which my grandmother wasn't there, if she was out running an errand, or if for some reason she wasn't there to feed us, obviously no one is going to wait to feed children because they're of the gender that's not considered the person that's supposed to feed the children. I'll give you another example. A gender role that's normally considered to be in place is the person who takes out the trash. So taking out the trash is considered to be something that's a male role. But if the trash has piled up and the male that lives in the house is not home, do people really wait for him to get home before they take out the nasty trash? Some things are ridiculous. So when you say that this particular role, and I think those things are more obviously ridiculous, but I'm going to get into the meat of what I'm speaking of. But when you say that this role has been set for a particular gender and that those things are set in stone, they can't change, they can't bend, you can't be flexible about them, I think it sets a tone for domination and control. And as I've stated before in more than one video, domination and control of anything, of anyone, as a thought process, as a way of viewing the world, as a way of viewing life, is destructive. It is not natural. It is not normal. For those of us who are African-centered, it's not African to feel that one person or one thing has to dominate or control another person or another thing. That is an unnatural thought. When you begin to think in that way, you are already thinking in an abusive manner. You can't think that you have to have control over another person and another thing and not be thinking thoughts that are abusive. And when I say abusive, what I mean is they are damaging to the psyche, to the self, to the soul, if you would, to the ori, as our ancestors would call it, of the person that you are trying to control, that you are trying to place your will upon. You're damaging that person. You're harming them. You're doing great harm to a person by trying to impose your will upon them. It's not the proper thing to do. So, many times we are faced, especially those of us in communities where people, think outside the box. You're not following the way of mainstream society. You're kind of over here doing your own thing. You know, you may be called a liberal. You may be called, a leftist. You may be called someone who, in the African-centered community, they often call people conscious, call people African-centered, Afrocentric. You have all these names for people who are not necessarily following mainstream society, alternative lifestyle. You don't follow a mainstream society. So oftentimes, when you are an individual, and they're also called subcultures. That's kind of the sociologist term for it, subculture, something outside of the dominant culture. But when you are a member, let's just say, of this kind of off to the side alternative group, somebody who doesn't follow mainstream, then oftentimes people will come in, or individuals will become famous, or individuals will be touted for having a new thing, a new way of thought, a new way of being, a new way of looking at a thing. When in actuality, they've taken an old, non-effective way of doing something and kind of wrapped it up in some gift wrap, and they're trying to pass that off as something new. In general, if something has not worked in the past, if it didn't work 20 years ago for your grandmother and your grandfather, if it didn't work 10 years ago for you and your ex-husband, if it didn't work 5 years ago for you and your ex-boyfriend, in general, wrapping it up in a different gift wrap is not going to change the fact that this mode of thinking and being is not effective. It does not work. Patriarchal, white, racist, patriarchal, earth-hating, women-hating, life-hating, atmosphere-hating type of thinking does not work. It doesn't work for anybody. If you are anti-woman, if you are anti-child, then you are anti-life. Because women and children are life. That includes all gender. Children includes all gender. So women and children are life. So if you have created a society that is anti-woman and anti-child, then you are creating an anti-life society. Further, if you have created a society that treats children as inferior beings and treats women as inferior beings, you have created an anti-life society. And that's just the truth of the matter. There's no pretty paper that you can wrap this up in that makes it okay. There's a new set of books that's out, written by a woman who appears to be a woman of color. I don't know what her ethnicity is. And the name of one of the titles of the books is Men Lead. And there's a lot of memes and a lot of different things being thrown up by people who support this person. And when you give the man his leadership role in the family, then the family can run smooth. When has that ever worked? Is my question. When has that ever worked? When you attempt to teach a woman or attempt to shove a belief system down the throat of a woman that teaches her that she is inferior, that she is lesser, that she requires a leader, and we're talking about grown women, requires a leader, then you are putting her in the position to be abused. When women are abused, physically, emotionally, and mentally, women are then very frequently killed. Women are murdered. Check the statistics. I'm not wrong about this. The majority of the homicides that occur in the United States of America when women are the victims are homicides that are being enacted by their partners. When you put a woman in a position and you create a society that makes a woman feel and believe that she is a lesser being, you are leading her down the path that leads to her untimely death. That's where you are leading her. So to create a series of books or to come out with a quote-unquote new thought process that teaches that men lead is only leading women down the path to death. It is not new. It has not ever worked. There's never been a patriarchal society that has not been riddled with rape and with child molestation and with the death of the innocents. That's what it means to be patriarchal. All three of those things are the pillars upon which any patriarchal society is built. So when you teach that mode of thinking is correct, know that you are teaching women that it is okay for them to get into a position to be murdered by their partners, that you are teaching children that it is okay for them to be in a position to be abused by people who are bigger and stronger than them. That's what that means. It is illogical. It is stupid. It is idiotic to assume that if there is a household that contains a sane adult male and a sane adult woman, that anybody would be required to quote unquote lead. What does that even mean? It is an ignorant assumption. It is an assumption that hasn't been thought through. So what you are saying is, sit back and let the man take the leadership role. So what does that say about him? What does that say about him? I want my children. These are the people that I have pushed out of my body, that I am at least 20 years older than. At least, because I had my first child at 20. If they see me getting ready to walk off of a cliff, I pray that my 5-year-old would say, that's not wise. Don't do that. That is dumb. You are going to die. I pray that my children will always give input as to what is going on in our household. But you are saying that when there are two adults, that one adult is not qualified to give input as to what is going on in the household by virtue of the fact that she has a vagina. That makes a whole lot of sense. So vagina makes you unqualified to put input into your own household. That makes a whole lot of sense, considering the fact that everybody comes from a vagina. If I were going to assume that one person were more qualified to be the leader, it would probably be the one that had pushed everybody out of their body. That would just be my assumption. But the way that I live my life is, if there are sane adults around, why is there a necessity for a leader? Sane adults can't sit down and come to a consensus? So then you're not in a relationship. If you're around a group of sane adults that you can't come to a consensus with, then you don't know these people well. You're not in a relationship with them. But surely, two sane adults who have entered into a matrimonial bond and who have property and things of this nature together, surely these two people can always sit down and come to a consensus. Surely. Or there are, of course, situations in which I know more about what's going on. So then that would be the situation in which I take the lead for that time. There are going to be situations in which he knows more about what's going on. So those would be situations in which he takes the lead. But to blanketly state things, and I've seen the meme, so I'm basically quoting. But the more you listen to your husband's leadership and do not question him, the more smoothly your home will run. You're setting up a dictatorship. And when has that ever been successful on a small scale? When is that? It's not successful from my perspective on a large scale. But I know someone is going to argue and say that it is because of the amounts of, wars that have been won. So I'm sure dictatorships are very successful when it comes to, measuring our worth by how many people we've killed. But outside of that perspective, when is a dictatorship ever successful? For those of us who grew up, I'll be 45 in a few weeks, so I come from a different generation than this generation. I come from a generation that was very authoritative and authoritarian in its parenting. And how many family issues did that cause? When you never had a say in anything, when you weren't allowed to speak up and say what your opinion was, when you weren't allowed to have input on the things that were going on in your own life. Did that create good relationships? Let's just be honest. Did it create good relationships? Did it make you feel good about yourself? Did it make you feel competent to make good decisions when it was the time for you to step up and begin to make decisions for yourself? Or were you still seeking the approval of mommy and daddy once you had became an adult? All of those of us who were raised in an authoritarian way like that can speak to how ineffective it is. It does not create competent adults. It cannot create competent people. Societies that require that the members of the society follow blindly can be authoritarian, can be authoritative, can be dictatorships. But societies that actually value the members of the society always operate via consensus. But you're setting women up and you're wrapping it up in this new wrapping paper and saying that it's something new. That women have somehow become less feminine. That, a masculine man does not want a masculine woman. But isn't that obvious? Is that new? Nobody knew that? I don't understand. And I disagree that my chromosomes somehow make me an ineffectual leader. I disagree with that. And if you really believe that being a woman makes you weak and makes you ineffective and makes you too dumb to make decisions for yourself, then what I want women who believe that to do is I want them to go off to the side and create a new gender for themselves because they are ashamed to be women. So then don't be one. We don't need you over here. Go on over to the side and create some sort of handmaiden helpmeet gender so that men who are looking for women whose self-esteem and whose self-image is so low and who think so lowly of their own vaginas and vulvas and wombs and breasts that they don't have any respect for themselves and they feel as though they don't need a husband or a man. What they need is a daddy, because that's what that is. They out there looking for that. Then I want you to create a new gender for yourself. Because it is an effrontery to womanhood to write books that teach women that they don't have sense enough to speak up for themselves, that they should enter into relationships where they are treated inferior, and then sit up and laud and magnify that as though that is a good relationship. Nobody feels good in a relationship where they are treated inferior. No one enjoys that. It's why it's so difficult to be a child. And why none of us could wait to grow up. Because you don't enjoy being treated as though you are stupid, as though you are less, as though you are lower. Nobody enjoys that. Having a vagina does not magically make you want to be treated like that. So if that is how you feel, then I want you to stop calling yourself a woman. Call yourself something else. Go on and create a new gender for you. So that those of us who are proud of being women and who understand the strength and the power and the intelligence that it takes to even live in a body with this particular set of chromosomes and with breasts and with buttocks and with a vulva and a vagina and a womb, who understands that that's a different kind of strength and power in and of itself. There are those of us who understand that and we embrace that. We're going to be over here as women. But you all who thinks that it makes you low and less than, we want y'all to go on and create something else for y'all to be. So that there won't be any confusion. Because the man that's looking for you, I don't want him to, come over in my camp. That's not going to work out for nobody. So I want him to be clear what he's looking for. And where he can find it. It's not over here. That's not a woman. I don't know what that is. If you see womanhood as being that lowly, then I don't know what we should even call you. If you don't have any more respect than that for yourself, for your daughters, for your nieces, for your sisters, for your mother, for your grandmothers, you don't have any more respect than that. You think that their lives would have been better if there had been someone to tell them what to do. Which is just a mind-blowing statement in and of itself for those of us who had black mamas. You really think that the black mama's life would have been better if she had had somebody to tell her what to do? That's hilarious right there. It's kind of scary. My mother is in the ancestral realm, and I'm kind of terrified to even say that somebody would have ever told this woman what to do. That it's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. No self-sufficient, self-loving woman, and definitely not any black woman who is self-sufficient, who loves herself, who handles her business, who takes care of the things that she needs to take care of, requires a leader. Everybody on Earth Mother Onile, everything requires a mate. Everything has a divine opposite. Everything has a touchstone that comes to you and comforts you and helps you to remember what is beautiful and what is kind and what is loving in this oftentimes difficult to navigate universe. Everybody has a person and has a thing that they can relate to in that way, and everybody wants that, and everybody yearns for that. We come here to make that connection. But once your mother and your father have guided you to self-sufficiency, nobody is here looking for a leader. Nobody's here looking for that. We are seeking love, but none of us are seeking new parents. Once your parents have fully raised you, you're good. You don't require any more parenting. That doesn't mean that when you get into a relationship, you won't learn new things about yourself. Your relationship should fine-tune you and make you better and help you to become even more mature and help you to grow. None of that is based upon anyone that you're in a relationship with treating you as though you are inferior to them. That's not how you grow. It's not how you grow. No one can grow from that perspective. So that's not what it means to be in a loving relationship. That's not how you create loving relationships. It is not how you encourage black people to get into loving relationships. It is an ineffective method of coming together. That patriarchal, abusive, dominate and control method. It comes from the Greco-Roman way of thought that says that something has to be us and something has to be other. And when you operate from that madness, then you always feel that other can be a victim. It's okay to victimize anything that's other. And so this society has chosen different others depending upon where we are in history. So it is chosen originally for this society in the United States of America, and the Native Americans were the others. So it was okay to victimize them. They were objectified, which means that their humanity was taken and they were made to seem as though they were just objects. So when Cristobal Colon, which was his real name, came here, he and his conquistadors, his soldiers, would cut off the heads of the Nican Takla, the indigenous people of this land, and use them to play polo. That's what it means to objectify someone. You do not see them as human. That is the danger of having the us and other mentality. You cease to see the other being as human. That is the danger of telling a woman that she should sit down and shut up and let her husband lead. He ceases to see her as human. Would he go into a situation with another man and ask that man to sit down and shut up and let him make the decision? No, he would not. Unless he saw that man as lesser than him, which is still a situation of objectification. You have to, in order to have a real, normal, natural, healthy relationship, see the other being as human. Understand that they have the same thoughts and feelings and hopes and wants and dreams as you. The same way that you would feel if somebody said, sit down and shut up and let me make the decision, is how it makes the other person feel. And yes, mommies, that's how your children feel when you tell them that too. Same way that we felt when our mother said it to us. So you strive not to say that to them. You don't want to make anyone feel like that. It is not normal, natural, healthy, godly, whatever title you want to put on it, to make another person feel lesser than you. And it is certainly not righteous and upright and African and ancient to tell a woman that she is lesser to a man. That's not natural. And it is not going to be effective. I was raised in the country, and we were taught never to corner any animal. You never back any animal into a corner, because any animal backed into a corner will fight back viciously. Even a mouse, even sometimes a roach. Them big flying roaches, you catch the wrong one and back it off into a corner, it's going to fly at you. Anything backed into a corner is going to fight viciously. And when you create an environment in your household where one person feels lesser and the other person is always dominating and controlling, eventually this person who feels lesser is going to lash out. That's what's going to happen. It is not an equal situation. It is not a balanced situation. It is not healthy. It is not normal. And it is these situations that is leading to the death. It's the leading cause of the deaths of women in the United States. So when you tell a woman to do that, to sit down and shut up and let him lead, you're leading her straight to the door of her death. You're leading her straight to the door of her own destruction. You are asking her to give up her self-worth, to lay her value to the side, to agree that she is a lesser being, and to then put herself in the position to be dominated and controlled. That's what that means. When you hear someone make a statement, follow the statement out to its conclusion. Don't just listen to the statement, but say, well, if that is so, then what happens? If this continues to happen and if we follow this path, what happens along this path? That's what happens. You cannot take an old, outdated, horribly ineffective, destructive mode of thinking and try to make it new. I don't care what you call it. If it's destructive and if it's killing people, then it's wrong. If it's causing people to think that it's okay to murder people, it's okay to batter people, it's okay to bully people, if it's making people feel like those things are okay, it's wrong. And if you are serving a God that tells you that that's right, then you should examine why you are choosing to give your power to a being that says that it's correct to objectify other beings. Why are you giving your power to that being? And can that be a good being? If it's saying it's right for you to objectify other beings and hurt them and harm them in my name, has it ever been something that's positive? Anywhere on earth, Mother Onile, do we see that being positive? Is it good? Is it good for people? Not for corporations. We're not looking at who has the most money. We're not looking at who has the biggest body count at the end of whatever war. Is it good for people? Does it help people to live a good life? If it doesn't, then it's not a path that you want to follow. It's as simple as that. I am disgusted. I've been disgusted for a couple of months behind this, this particular set of books and the memes and things that have come or been created as a result of the writing of these books. And I pray that we are moving into a time, and I pray that I can help women to understand their power and help women to understand the innate power and beauty of having chosen to be one who carries a breast and a womb and a vagina and a vulva in this lifetime. And that does not make you inferior to anyone or anything. It does not then okay your victimization. It does not mean that you are dumb. It does not mean that you are too emotional to make competent decisions. It does not mean then that you are just an open field for anybody's sexual advances. I pray that I'm helping women to see that as part of the work that I see that is my life, that is my destiny. But in addition to that, and I guess as part of that, I feel it necessary to speak out against those who are leading women in the other direction. And the other direction is their death. That's what I'm talking about. When you tell a woman that she has to take an inferior role, be completely and totally clear that you are putting her in a position of being controlled. And that when a woman is being controlled, she is more likely to be killed by the person who is controlling her. It's that important. It is life and death. It is not a difference of opinions. It is not a difference of ideologies. It is not a difference of religion or upbringing. It is a simple question of whether you want women to live or whether you don't care if you send women to their death. If you are such a cheerleader for the patriarchy that you would offer the rest of us up as sacrifices to it, then we don't want you on our team. Choose another gender. You are not a woman. You are something else. You can put whatever name on it that you want to. I'm choosing helpmeet and handmaiden. That's fine. That can be now become your gender. Because you don't belong over here if you would offer us up this easily. To death. That's what you're sending women to. You're sending them to their death. All right. Peace and blessings, ecstasy, abundance, and bliss, and all of the glories of Oshun upon those who are wishing the same for me and mine, and the lessons of life upon those who are wishing me otherwise.